Hi everybody. So today we're going to see how to start an aquaculture business. So you have the structure of the video. So in the first place, we're going to see what are the distinctions between marine versus continental aquaculture. Then we will try to identify what would be your most relevant markets. And eventually we'll try to make a selection of the most promising species based on business and biological criteria. So thank you for watching and hope you'll enjoy the video. So we start with marine versus continental aquaculture. So in terms of definition, marine would be when you do aquaculture outside, I don't know, in the sea, in the ocean, or in a lake, while continental aquaculture is when you would have specific dedicated infrastructure on land on which you would do aquaculture. So if we start with marine, the first element to mention is in marine you do not need a lot of strong technical knowledge. This is due to the fact that you will operate your exploitation within a natural environment on which you won't be able to have any impact. So you cannot settle the parameters of your environment. Then you have a lower capex and opex in comparison to continental, in which you need to have specific infrastructures. And finally, you're usually able to operate it at larger scale. This is due to the fact that usually you have access to larger area within the sea than on land. Then about the disadvantages. So due to the fact that you cannot have any impact on the environment, you're only able to grow a limited type of species. So you will only be able to grow the fish that naturally live in this kind of environment. Then you might pollute the environment also. So this will especially depends on the water streams and also on the intensity of your exploitation. And finally, you might disrupt the ecosystem and the food chain if some of your fish escape. But this is also especially in the fact if you grow fish that naturally do not live there. So then if we move to continental aquaculture, so the first advantage is you're able to settle all of the parameters. So with that, you will be able, I don't know, to change the level of salinity, the water temperature, the level of oxygen, and so on and so on. And with that, you're really able to create the type of water you want. Ensuring from that, you will be able to select any type of species, because since you create the water you want, you can put the fish that you want. I mean, the fish that correspond to this water. Then you're able to produce more intensively. So this is especially due to the fact of the level of oxygen. So you will be able to feed a lot of oxygen within the water, which enables you to have more concentrated number of fish per meter cube. And finally, you do not pollute the environment with the exiting water. Then in terms of disadvantages, so first you will have a high capex and opex. You will also need strong technical knowledge, so engineers which really know how to operate this machine and how to make the fish grow in the best environment. And finally, you also have a risk of technical issues. So this one is quite important, especially if you live in a country in which you might experiment electricity blackouts. So just keep in mind that if you have an intensive exploitation, I don't know, if you would lose electricity for 1 hour, your water will lack of oxygen and all of your fish will die. And so if you have a production of 2 years, you lose 2 years of production of fish due to technical issues. So this is quite a risk. If you're a beginner in the industry, I would always recommend to go for marine because it's much simpler. But then if you have the investments and you think that you would be able to have the technical knowledge and the capacities, you can just go for continental. So we get to the second part of this video, which is identification of the relevant markets. So this will mainly depend on one component. So it depends on your product. If you want to make a fresh frozen product, you basically have no storage issues, so you can ship it anywhere. So you do not have to bother with this. The disadvantages is basically frozen products have a lower value than fresh products. So if you want to go for fresh products, which you will be able to sell for more expensive, the rule is the earlier the fish is sold, I mean after harvest, the higher is its value. So basically you should not sell it more than 3 days after harvesting. So when you get into account, so when you take into account these components, the best for you will be to find a closed markets, which will enable you to save time, so to have a higher fish value, and which will also enable you to reduce the transportation cost. So if you have a look, for instance, here, you would have your exploitation here. Basically what you should do, depending on the way you intend to transport the products. So if you want to go by truck, this would be your diameter. And if you would like to ship it by airplane, basically you could ship it anywhere in the world. The only thing is, if you want to ship it by airplane, it's a little bit complicated, because since the cost of transportation per kilogram is higher, you will need to have a high value products in order to compensate for the transportation cost. So you would not be able, I don't know, to sell a raw fish, but you maybe should be able to sell, I don't know, some type of high value fillet, caviar, or these kind of goods. So then for you, the goal will be to find, I mean, depending on the product you have and the way you want to transport it, the goal will be to find a large importer in order to increase your sale volume, a market on which the price are quite high, which will enable you to increase your price per unit, and finally for a closed market, which will enable you to reduce your transportation costs. So for you, the goal when you identify your markets is really to optimize this formula, which is the volume times the price, which should be as high as possible, minus the transportation cost, which should be as low as possible. And all these data are available, so you should be able to find your best markets. So we get to the last part of this video, which is selection of the most promising species. So just to wrap it up from the beginning, so we started with marine versus continental. So we saw that with marine, we limited with the type of fish that we can grow, and with continental, we basically can grow any species. Then we've been looking for the most promising markets, basically in terms of volume of imports, price per unit, and low transportation cost. So when you take into account these two elements, it's like, okay, you see what range of species can I make grow, and then, okay, which one are the most promising with regards to the markets near me. So then you should end up with, I don't know, maybe two, three different type of species. And then for you, the goal will be to compare them and to see which one will be the most profitable for you. So if we start with the biological criteria, the first one is the feed conversion ratio, FCR. So this ratio tells you for 1 kilo of fish, how many kilo of food you have to give them. So the lower the ratio is, the more profitable the fish will be, because it means that the fish is able to process the food quite well and to retain it. Then we have the breeding density. So this one tells you, okay, for 1 meter cube, how many fish can you put in it without damaging the health. Then we have the speed growth, which is also quite important. So the faster your fish is going to grow, the faster you'll be able to sell it and then to make profits. And then we also end up with the immune system. So the immune system is also quite relevant, because some fish have different immune system, and so quite often you might end up with quite a number of fish that will die before harvest time. So then we get to the business criteria. So the first one is the number of fries producers and the price per fries. So when you will make your aquaculture business, you will need to make sure that you will be able to get the supply of fries. And so, I don't know, if you decide to go for a species which has only one fries producer, it's a little bit risky, because if the guy runs out of business, you won't be able to keep going on your activities. So make sure that you have quite some fries producers, and also see the price per fries. Then you will also look for the competition. So are you on a species in which you have, I don't know, a lot of producers, a lot of different, is the market saturated? I mean, this depends on the type of fish. Then we also have the consumption volume, which comes back here, and the price per kilo. So all these elements on which you have a store, you see, they should appear in your business modeling. And so by taking into account all of these elements, you should be able to have quite a good overview of the markets and of what would be the best options for you. So thank you a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.